What's going on, bottom line viewers? It's Mitch here, back with your NFL Week 15 reaction, review, recap. This is the show where I rant, I rave about the latest week in the NFL, this time for Week 15 of the 2021 NFL season. This is the show where I break down all of the interesting storylines and tell you my thoughts on this latest week in the NFL. Now, the COVID schedule has kind of thrown my personal schedule as a creator out of whack. Of course, usually I do this show on a Monday night following Monday Night Football, but unfortunately, we also had Tuesday Night Football. On top of that, I went to see Spider-Man No Way Home for the second time with my dad. He wanted to see it. I'm a big Spider-Man fan, as you can see. And because of that, I'm actually going to be opening myself up to doing different content. And I'm going to be doing a review on the movie. So for any of you MCU fans, Spider-Man fans, or superhero fans, whatever it may be, check out my other channel, the Mitch Milani channel, where I do stream some Madden on there occasionally as well. Subscribe to that channel for my No Way Home review, which will come out this week at some point. I'm just going to discuss the movie and give you my thoughts. And if you want to support me to the next level, you can check out any other content that isn't NFL related that will be on that channel. So give it a look, give it a subscribe, and watch out for the review. But in this video, we're sticking to football. If you guys haven't already, follow me on social media, at Mitch Milani on Twitter, and at TheBottomLineView on Instagram for the ultra top 10 teams in the NFL, Kevin Durant's starts and sits in fantasy, and a lot more. Unfortunately, we didn't do this live, but let me know what you think. Do you actually prefer it to be live, or do you prefer it to be recorded? Let me know in the comment section below. But let's get rolling with our Week 15 review. And before we get rolling with that review, I do want to give a shout out to the BLV GOATs and the BLV patrons of the channel. If you guys love what I do here, you support my content by watching all of my videos. To take it to the next level, you could support me on Patreon. And it's not only just support, but you can also get exclusive content that's not found here on YouTube. Those patrons on the channel, we have right now 2 BLV GOATs. Of course, Bodo Winter, the man himself, and Ronald A. Smith. Shout out to you guys. We also have many more who are subscribed to the Patreon, like Daniel, Joseph Ware, Pete Back, Ultra, Grant Gayton, Martin, Christopher Sims, Devin, Isaac, Jack, Jeff, Lane, LT, Nitty, Randall, Steve, Sean, Ryan, Chris VLV, Brian, Colts Rule, Eric Wolfman, Justin Mackey, Mark Zuckerberg, aka Lenny B, Money Mike, Robert, Tyler, Tyrone, Winnie, and more. Thank you guys for being a patron. Thank you guys for supporting me on Patreon, and thank you guys for checking out that extra content over there. Shout out to you guys. If you want a shout out, you can also subscribe on Patreon. All right. So, as we always do, let's kick it off with the Ultra 10. Let's give our takes on the top 10 teams in the NFL according to Ultra. You can also find this on Instagram. Let's get rolling. So, the Ultra 10. This guy, Ultra. 1 week, I'm saying 1 week of my New England Patriots not playing their best football, and he moves them down to number 7. How depressing is that? Well, I disagree. That is my biggest disagreement with this list. I look at the Packers and Chiefs at number 1 and number 2, and I think that's fine. I don't think either team are really a dominant team, but recent play, I can understand Packers, Chiefs both being there, both on winning streaks, both playing good football, both with good quarterbacks. I can understand it. The Bucs at number 3. I like that he didn't totally overreact to them losing to the Saints, as they typically lose to the Saints for whatever reason. At number 4, the Rams feel like a fragile number 4, but I can kind of see what he's going for here with the Rams. They've got a lot of upside. When they're playing at their best, they're one of the best teams in the NFL. Same can be said about the Dallas Cowboys at number 5. He puts the Colts ahead of the Patriots after the Colts beat the Patriots, despite the Patriots having a better record. But I guess I'm not going to get too mad at that because the Colts did beat the Patriots. Now, if we're talking about playoff potential, I feel like New England still has a higher ceiling than the Colts. But the Colts have been one of the hottest teams in the NFL, and at least he shows that respect here. The Cardinals at number 8, for whatever reason, feel a little bit high after losing to the Detroit Lions. But again, I can't get all over Ultra for not overreacting here to a loss, but it was versus the Detroit Lions. I mean, is there a worse team in the NFL? Number 9, the 49ers. I would agree they deserve to be in this top 10. The Chargers at number 10 deserve to be in the top 10. Are there any teams that are in there or not in there that deserve to be in there? That's the question, and I'm thinking about it. He's got all 3 NFC West teams. He's got the Bucs in the NFC South. He's got the Packers in the NFC North. He's got the Cowboys in the NFC East. That all makes sense. He does not have the Buffalo Bills on this list. I think you could debate Bills, Chargers, pretty close. I think you could debate Cardinals and Bills, to be honest with you. I definitely think you could. AFC North, I don't know who the best team is in that division. He's got no Titans, which I think is totally fair. And then AFC West, he's got Chiefs and Chargers. So I think really the only team that he missed that maybe has a debate is the Bills. So that might be one that makes my top 10. They've got a big game this week versus my Patriots. We'll see how that one goes. That is your Ultra top 10 for Week 15. Let me know your top 10 in the comment section below. All right. So those are Ultra Power Rankings. Next up, we have Do Stats Tell the Truth? And this is a good segue to our discussion about the Buffalo Bills. So Lenny actually gave me this idea, and he said, you're always saying that the Buffalo Bills aren't as good as their stats suggest. And I'm like, yeah, I always talk about that. And I feel like analytics, stats, whatever numbers you want to throw out there, and specifically one stat in particular, point differential, is a very baseline statistic that we can look at to determine how good a team is. How dominant do they win games? When they lose, how close are the games that they lose? And I think the Bills are a weird indication of stats this season. Because when you look at the Bills statistically, they're one of the top offenses, one of the top defenses. Their point differential's first in the NFL. But they aren't a top 10 team, according to Ultra. So what does that really mean? What does that DVOA suggest? Well, I think with the Buffalo Bills, it's particularly interesting because the Bills have thrived off of playing teams that simply aren't very good. You look at the Buffalo Bills from this season, as I'm pulling it up right now, the Buffalo Bills are 8-6, okay? They are 5th in points for. They are 2nd in points against. They are 8-6. They have 2 more wins than losses, despite ranking in the top 5 in points allowed and points for. On top of that, they are 7th in yards offensively and 1st, number 1 in yards defensively. Across the board, they are 7th in passing yards, 1st in pass defense. The only areas they really lack are run offense and run defense. Okay? You look at their points and their point differential. In their wins, let's just take a look at their wins. The Miami Dolphins in week 2, they beat them 35-0. In week 3, they beat Washington 43-21. That's by 22 points. The Texans in week 4 by 40 points, 40-0. They beat the Chiefs impressively, which is by far their most impressive win, 38-20. The Dolphins, they beat by 15 the second time, 26-11. The Jets, 45-17. That's a lot of points. The Saints, 31-6. The Panthers, 31-14 this last week. And this is what I'm talking about with the Buffalo Bills. Watch their game from this past week. Pulling up the box score. The Buffalo Bills had a moment in this game in the fourth quarter where they were leading 24-14. And they decided to go for it on fourth down with 2 minutes remaining in the game, I believe. And Josh Allen threw a touchdown to Gabe Davis. Are you serious? How can I take your stats seriously when you're up by 10? There's no sense in you going for it in this scenario. You go for it and you add to your point differential. What does that say about point differential? What does that say about points for? What does that say about your stats? That is the Buffalo Bills all season long. They beat up on the bad teams that they're superior than. They punish them into the ground. They bully them. They make sure they don't get back up. They scored 14 in the fourth quarter of the first game of the season where they won 35-0. Let's check Washington. They scored 7. Okay, fair enough. The Texans game, 40-0. They scored 21 points in the fourth quarter when they were already well in the lead. Like, this is what I'm talking about right here. Let's check this Jets game, 45-17 over the Jets. They only scored 7. Okay, so they scored 21 in the third quarter. Fair enough. But the Bills are a team that they have played some good teams this year. If you consider the Steelers a good team, I guess. I don't know. I don't think so, but they're at least average. They lost to them 23-16. They lost to the Titans 34-31. They did beat the Chiefs. They lost to Jacksonville, who's a terrible team. They lost to the Colts 41-15. They lost to the Patriots 14-10. And they lost to the Bucs 33-27. So all the teams on their schedule that you would consider a good team, the only one that they beat is the Chiefs. And they lost to a bad team in Jacksonville. But every other team they face is below average. Miami, Washington, Houston. Again, the Jets, the Saints, the Panthers, like, they beat up on these teams. So, I think this is just a discussion about context. When you're throwing these stats out there and you're trying to judge teams and you're trying to power rank teams and you're trying to make your list of top 10 and you're trying to predict the future and you're trying to say who's going to win the Super Bowl. Not that, like, who you beat matters a ton in those scenarios, but look at the context of how they got those statistics. Are they just beating up on bad teams? Are they beating up on good teams? Are they losing close games? Are they getting blown out consistently? What is it looking like? How are they winning these games? In what context are they winning these games? And when you're looking at pass offense, pass defense, who have they played in terms of good pass defenses? Who have they played in terms of good pass offenses? Quarterbacks, who have they played? So every stat needs the context. Every stat you need to back up with your study, rather, of the game, of the film of the game, or you need to look deeper. And this is an indication of that. That is the Buffalo Bills. That is this team for this year. They're a good team. They're not a great team, but their numbers suggest they're a phenomenal team. They suggest they're arguably the best team in the NFL, okay? But they're not, right? They're about the 5th or 6th best team right now in the AFC. They're not even in Ultra's top 10. How can that be? Because of context. So that's the first discussion. The Bills. Let me know what you think about the Bills. Do you think that maybe I'm wrong? Maybe the Bills are a team that just been a little bit unlucky. Maybe they are as good as the numbers suggest, but they just haven't lived up to their potential yet. Let me know in the comments. Next. All right, we have to discuss it. The Saturday night game, the Patriots, the Indianapolis Colts. And my headline for this one is Mac is growing. Mac Jones is growing as a football player, as a quarterback. So the Patriots lost kind of a similar game earlier in the year to the New Orleans Saints. And it was a game where the Patriots fell behind. Mac made some mistakes. And ultimately, their defense couldn't make enough plays for them to have an opportunity to come back. He showed some resilience in that game. He showed some fight in that game. But their passing game clearly needed time to evolve and grow. And I feel like in this Colts game, I tweeted about it. I talked about it. And what frustrated me coming out of that game, as a couple games this week did, and we're going to talk about those games, the inaccurate analysis that followed this game. So a lot of people were talking about this game, suggesting Mac Jones played terribly. He was the reason they lost, yada, yada, yada. The Patriots, they're frauds, yada, yada, yada. Of course, you're going to get this about the Patriots because they're a very hated team, and everybody wants to pick on them and nitpick them and suggest that they're no real threat in the AFC. And I don't believe that to be the case, and I don't think you should believe that to be the case. So when you watch this game, the Colts won. The Colts deserved to win. And a big part of that is the Colts made less mistakes than the Patriots. The Patriots in this game, the reason they lost was not Mac Jones. They had a punt blocked, 7 points for a touchdown, not just blocked in their end for a touchdown. They went offside on a field goal attempt, allowing the Colts to have another field goal attempt, adding another 3 points. They had numerous penalties in the Colts' red zone, that caused them to maybe kick a field goal instead of score of a touchdown. Of course, Jonathan Taylor had the long run at the end, which inflated the score. And then Mac Jones had those interceptions where one of them, they drove into the Colts' red zone and he threw a bad interception. Darius Leonard made a great play. The other one was intercepted, a great play by the linebacker there for Indianapolis. When you watch this game, I think what we saw was a team in New England that came out a bit sluggish, that wasn't ready off the bye, a team that came out with less energy. The Colts were playing at home. They were playing a team they haven't beat since 2009. The Colts were motivated to win. They were motivated to make a statement. They were motivated to get this big win under their belt, and they desperately needed it for their playoff chances. The Patriots, on the other hand, were the number 1 seed, comfortable, everybody's hyping them up, including myself, yada, yada, yada. So there were a lot of factors for why the Colts won this game. I'm not trying to take anything away from the Colts. They're a good team. I, in fact, think they're a dark horse in this conference. The way they can run the ball, play defense. What impressed me about the Colts, their front seven. Their front seven did a fantastic job slowing down Ramondre Stevenson and the Patriots' running game, forcing the Patriots to get in uncomfortable situations for Mac Jones. Their run game did good enough. And then at the end, Jonathan Taylor sealed it. Of course, they have their concerns. Their offensive line's awesome, but Carson Wentz is the big concern there. I mean, they won a game where I think they threw for 50 yards. Maybe 50 yards. I don't even know what the stats suggest. He threw an interception. He only had 12 pass attempts. He should have thrown 3 interceptions. So they certainly have their flaws. And we saw their secondary get a little bit exposed in the second half. But their front seven is really dynamic, really fast. And I thought New England took a totally bad approach to this game offensively. I thought they were going to come out, they were going to spread and shred. Empty formation. Bam, over the middle, Hunter Henry. Bam, Jacoby Myers. Bam, Kendrick Bourne. Instead, they come out and they try to play the Colts like they're the Buffalo Bills, which I thought was a terrible strategy. And it took until the third quarter to figure that out. And then eventually New England goes up and down the field. You know, sometimes they're stalled in the red zone, which the Colts did a good job of red zone defense. But they moved the ball up and down the field in the second half. And we saw that momentum, and we saw New England start to click. They just weren't able to do enough at the end of the game to win it. And it was uncharacteristic business from New England. You don't see them take all those penalties, 8 penalties. You don't see them turn the ball over twice. You don't see them get a blocked field goal and go offside on or a blocked punt and go offside on a field goal. You don't see that from New England. That doesn't happen. During the 7 games, they did everything virtually perfect. So that game's probably not going to replicate. That game's probably not going to happen again. But there are things you can learn from that game if you're a Patriots fan and if you're the Patriots. And the biggest thing I took away from the game is you've got to trust Mac Jones when the matchup suggests to trust Mac Jones. Because I firmly believe, and this is, again, no takeaway from the Colts. I think the Colts are a good team. But I do think the Patriots are a better team. I just thought the Colts played better on that day. If the Patriots came out of that game right to start with Mac Jones as the primary option, passing the ball, being pass-heavy script-wise, New England probably wins the game. Because that's what suggested, the game plan suggested, that's what the weakness was of the Colts. And they took too long to format themselves to that. And that was my frustration doing the live stream. You'll see that. You'll see me calling for that. Defensively, is it concerning a little bit that a couple of teams have been able to run on New England? Yes, because it kind of gives you 2019 flashbacks. But you got to recall that Jawan Bentley got hurt during the game. You got to recall that really they had 98 yards to 100 yards on 28 attempts until that 70-yard touchdown. And then that kind of like inflated the yards. On top of that, you also have to throw in Duggar got ejected, who's kind of like that strong safety that comes down and plays the run. And then on top of that, the Colts extended a lot of drives through quarterback sneaks on 4th and 1. So, like, a lot went right for the Colts, a lot went wrong for the Patriots. But I think the biggest thing I learned was this team can compete even when they don't play well, right? And a lot of people are saying the opposite. A lot of people are saying, this team can't do it because Mac Jones isn't going to be able to do it versus these top teams. When they fall behind, they're not going to be able to come back. And I think we actually had that answer. I think it was right. I think we saw that if the Patriots fall behind, they can come back. They can make a game of it. They won't give up. Right? This isn't a team that's just going to fall on their face and give you the game. If the other team's up 14-0. Like in this game, the Colts were up 20-0. And the Patriots almost managed to come back in the game. Or at least made it a fight. At least made it interesting at the end. Which a lot of teams can't do that. So credit New England for that. And I think we saw something that I think all Patriots fans in the back of our mind were fearing. That if we didn't get a game like this, if we didn't see that Mac Jones could do this, when the other team knows you're going to pass, they can pass, right? We saw that, and I think we saw the indication that if they get in that script, they'll be able to do it. And I think Belichick and this team will learn from it moving forward. So I was actually impressed by Mac Jones in this game. As many mistakes as he made, the 2 interceptions that he threw, I thought he played really well at the end of the day. I thought he made a lot of good throws. There's not a lot of quarterbacks that can be in rhythm and complete that many consecutive passes and go up and down the field the way that he did in this game. By the way, I thought Hunter Henry played really, really good in this game. And for the Colts, going back to the Colts, shifting back to them as a dark horse, I think they give a lot of the top teams in the AFC issues. I think they showed that they can compete with New England in a physical battle, whether it's in New England or in Indianapolis. Obviously, New England, being in New England is a little bit different than being at home, but still, they showed they can run the ball on you. They can play physical with their front seven, and it's going to be a fight. They can do the same thing when they go toe-to-toe with the Titans, who those 3 teams feel like they're in the corner, by themselves. They're the physical AFC teams. New England, Tennessee, Indianapolis. The other teams are kind of finesse. Or you got the Bills. You got the Chiefs. You've got the Chargers. And those teams kind of feel like they're more so finesse. They're more so air it out than the other teams are. But the Colts can kind of overpower those finesse teams. We saw it with the Bills. And I think they could do the same thing to the Chargers and the Chiefs and make it interesting in those games. So the Colts are kind of one of those teams that could play any sort of style and do it well because of their coaching, because of their versatility. And that's what I also like about New England on top of that. Now, the concern with the Colts is why I'm not going to pick them to win the Super Bowl or anything is Carson Wentz. He can't make these stupid decisions. He needs to be able to make the big throw when his coach wants him to make the big throw and can count on him even when leading. Even when every fan is saying, run the ball, run the ball, run the ball, Frank. Well, if he calls for a pass, you got to be able to make the play. You can't throw an interception. So those are my thoughts on that game. I am just disappointed in the discourse revolving around that game. Mac Jones was not the reason the team lost. Was he part of it early on? Yes. But was he also impressive? Yes. Is it time to panic for New England? Absolutely not. I think if anything, it showed that they played like crap and they still were able to hang in the game in the end. That's not going to happen again for New England, and I guarantee you that. Moving to the next topic. What did we learn from Thursday Night Football? On Thursday Night Football, we had the Chargers and the Chiefs. And I said, there were some games that I did not enjoy the discourse. I did not enjoy the whole conversation revolving around it. But I think in this game, it was a little bit more interesting. And I feel like we learned a little bit more, but I feel like people aren't necessarily taking away certain things from the game. So, in the Chiefs and Chargers game, in case you forgot who played on Thursday night, Brandon Staley went for it a ton in the game. And I'm actually going to pull this box score up so I don't have any details missed. But this is a team in the LA Chargers who I felt in this game, I don't want to say thoroughly dominated the game, but they controlled most of this game. The Chargers controlled most of this game. And they ended up doing what the Chargers always do. They chargered it. They messed it up. They allowed the Chiefs to get back in it. They allowed the Chiefs to take it to overtime. And ultimately, they lost the flip of a coin, which, by the way, I'd like to say this about that. Chiefs fans who were complaining about the 2018 AFC Championship game, I didn't hear you complaining about Justin Herbert not getting the opportunity to get the ball first. So what do you say about that? I want to hear you Chiefs fans on that regard because nobody's talking about it. Why not? Because all I remember is, it wasn't even a fair fight. Mahomes didn't get the ball. Brady only did. All right. Well, it goes both ways. So, when you look at the quarter scoring, Kansas City started 14-10. They were down at halftime. Then it became 14-13. And then basically, it was even from there on out. And even when you look at it, the Chiefs scored the last 2 touchdowns where the Chargers were able to take a touchdown lead, 28-21, with about a minute 16 remaining in the game. The Chiefs scored their tying touchdown. They had 2:19 to score it, and they ended up doing it in about a minute. Now, looking at the main area that everyone wants to talk about, 2 for 5 on 4th down. That was the Chargers. Chargers were 2 for 5 on 4th down. And there's completely 2 sides to this. So there's the people that thoroughly believe that you should be aggressive and you should use analytics to your advantage. And the analytics, when they suggest to go for it, you should go for it. There's another side of people that say, F analytics. Take the points when you can get them and move on to the next series. I feel like I'm somewhere in the middle. I feel like there's moments where you've got to feel as a coach what's going on, what are the matchups on the field, how's the momentum shifting in the game. I think that is a real thing. I understand people think that's fake. Having played sports myself, and any of you that have played sports, I feel would know that there are certain feelings in games where one team has control, one team has a feeling, and there are certain leverage points throughout a game in any sport where if you take advantage of that, you therefore might be able to win the game. If you fail that, though, you might have just lost the momentum and given it to the other team. So there were a few points in this game, and there were two in particular. The first series of the game, and these are the two that I disagree with the decision to go for it, okay? The first series of the game, the Chargers have a big kick return. Andre Roberts returns it inside, I want to say it was inside the red zone, or it was at least close. It was inside Chiefs territory. The Chargers were able to get it into a position to score. Mike Williams, I believe, dropped a pass. That's where Donald Parham got hurt as well. Sucked to see that happen. But they get to fourth down. And on the first series of the game, I understand that you fully want to leverage this and have a statement, right? Right away, score a touchdown. My problem with that is, what was the play that got you there? Was it your offense that got you to the red zone, that made those plays? Have we seen enough in this game so far of a track record that suggests your offense is dominating and that they will be able to punch this into the end zone? No, because the big play was a kick return. The big play was a kick return. And a kick return in football is a huge momentum play. When you get that energy, it's huge. And the Chargers came away from that drive with 0 points, which then swung the momentum in the Chiefs' favor, and they actually took a 10-0 lead after what seemed like the Chargers were going to take command of the game. Bam! Right away off the opening kickoff. They had huge momentum. But as soon as they were stopped, bam! Taken away from them. If you just kick 3, I understand it kind of sucks, right? Where you're like, oh, we had this huge kick return. We should have taken advantage with 7. If you kick 3, at least you come away with the opening drive with points. And at that point, you don't know what type of game this is going to be. You don't know if it's going to be a shootout. You don't know if it's going to be a lower scoring game. You don't know what type of game it's going to be quite yet. You don't know if you're going to need those 3 points later. So on the opening drive of the game, in that scenario, my suggestion, my belief is you just take the points there. Like, there's no real need to go for it there. I understand that the analytics suggest to go for it, but I just feel like getting 0 on a huge kick return is not a good call. The second scenario where I didn't like the call, which means I liked all the other calls. So you can say what you want about all the other calls. To go for it, I believe that that was the correct decision at that time. The second one that I didn't like was right before the half. And the reason I didn't like it is because the game was 14-10 for the Chargers. Now, statistically, analytically, okay, the score being 21-10 would be absolutely a huge edge. But my problem with kicking a field goal, or not kicking the field goal here, and going for it, is you were in such control of the game at that point, right? So the Chiefs are up 10-0. Then the Chargers surge. They get 2 touchdowns in a row. And then they have an opportunity to add to their lead before halftime and get a 7-point lead heading into half. Now, to me, this is a two-way sword. This is a double-edged sword because you have a 21-10 lead where you're in full command of the game if you make that. Or, okay, you fail and the Chiefs could just go down the field, score a touchdown, and take the lead. Okay? And the Chiefs actually score a field goal on their opening drive. So, here's the problem with it. If you get the field goal, even if the Chiefs go and score, it's still a tied game. It's not like they're leading the game by 3, therefore you're on the back end of the stick, so to speak, right? You're now trailing in the game. Okay, so if you take the field goal, you're up 7. If the Chiefs go down, they score a touchdown. Okay, it's tied. Whatever. we'll play the second half out. But even more so than that, kicking the field goal would mean it's probably the better decision from there. I don't know what it was from there. I would actually have to look deeper into the stats here for when they went for it on fourth down. Exactly, because they went for it 5 times. Obviously, we know they failed on the opening series, so that's already one failure that we saw. And there might have been a second one that we saw already. But you take the field goal there, and this is the biggest reason in my opinion. So when you're going for it on fourth down inside the 10-yard line like that, like they did, there are 2 reasons to go for it. One is because you'd rather a touchdown than a field goal, and that's 4 extra points potentially, at least 3. And 2, because if you fail, the other team gets the ball deep in their area of the field, which means, okay, if you kick the field goal, they get a better field position, as well as not going for the opportunity to score a touchdown and have more points. But at the end of the half there, I believe there was like 20 seconds left, 30 seconds at the most, left in the half. So there was almost no ability to win the field position battle if you fail. So there's too many negatives, in my opinion, to failing that touchdown rather than just taking the field goal. Now, we can't look ahead and say, oh, okay. And this is what too many people do when they talk about fourth down failures, is they go to the game and they look at what happened, right? They look at, oh, if you had this field goal, you would have won this or that, and you're trying to be Monday morning quarterback, right? So what ended up happening was the Chiefs got a field goal on their opening drive, and it was 14-13, and the Chargers still led, and then the Chargers got a touchdown, right? 21-13. So doing that logic, right, they would have been up 24-13, which that's probably where people are saying. Or they might have been up 27-13. They would have been up 14 if they got the field goal earlier in the game. And that's where people are talking about this, because when they're saying kick the field goal, they're looking at the final score, and they're not taking into account what would have happened if they get it. So they're not taking into account both sides of the story. But those are 2 examples of when they went for it that I didn't like. There are other examples throughout the game that I did like. And this is a whole discourse, if you're on Twitter, that's going on every single week, almost every single primetime game in the NFL. We're hearing one side fight the other side. We're hearing the new age versus the old school. And it's just getting annoying. Like, there's a happy medium in between, and that's kind of where I stand, and that's where I'm trying to explain here. And I think ultimately it comes down to the coach, and it comes down to the identity of your team, and it comes down to where you believe your team is best, and you believe in the matchups that you're facing in this game. And then there's the final part of this discussion, which is where I think the Chargers went wrong. The final part of this discussion is the play call itself. So everybody talks about, oh, you should or shouldn't go for it. And that's all they talk about. They don't talk about, you should go for it, but you should run it here. You should go for it, but you should pass it here. You should go for it, but you should target this player. You should go for it, but you should run to the right, run to the left, run to the middle, quarterback sneak, play action rollout, right? Nobody ever really talks about that, which is what I want to hear. When I'm watching a game on a broadcast, and this is what I try to do on my streams. When I'm listening to Troy Aikman and Joe Buck, I don't want to hear Troy Aikman talk about, I would kick the field goal. We all know, Troy, that you want to kick the field goal. What I want to hear about is, okay, if they're going to decide to go for it, what's the play call? What do you think they should do on this play? Now, I don't hear enough of that in the broadcast. I think that's a flaw of the broadcast because it's not educating us as viewers. And we want to hear what Troy Aikman, as a former quarterback, has to say about that, or Tony Romo has to say about that. And there was numerous times in this game where the Chargers decided to pass the ball despite running the ball down the Chiefs' throat for a majority of this game, and that's really how they were maintaining their hold on this game and their pace of play in this game, right? 13 for 86, Justin Jackson. 12 for 59 was Austin Eckler, and 7 for 21 was Joshua Kelly. So they ran the ball for well over 100 yards in this game, 150 yards. And specifically, they were getting 4 or 5 yards a pop. There was rarely a play where the Chiefs were stopping them behind the line of scrimmage. And they didn't have Chris Jones in this game, so there's another reason to run the ball in those scenarios. On the other hand, the Chiefs are probably stronger versus the pass. And I understand you want the ball to be in Justin Herbert's hand, but a lot of these calls that they made were very low percentage passing attempts. Just weren't going to work out a lot of the times. And that's what I hate the most, is these low percentage routes that you throw, or you're asking your quarterback to make a super difficult play. Make it as easy on the quarterback as possible in those scenarios. Put it on a matchup that you really believe in. And I thought that was the offensive line of the Chargers and the run game of the Chargers in that game versus the Chiefs' run defense. That's what I was seeing. I don't know if you guys feel the same way. Now, outside of the fourth down discussion, the other thing I took away from this game is that everyone seemingly didn't, was I thought the Chiefs appeared to be pretty human in the game and didn't look very good. I thought the Chiefs kind of showed what they are, which is a talented team with a great quarterback and some really nice players, but they're just not ready for this primetime big spot, and I don't think that's why they're not going to succeed in the playoffs. I think they have too many holes defensively. When Derwin James left the game, there was a big loss felt there. And offensively, they're just a little bit erratic. Their offensive scheme isn't consistent enough. They don't have the easy plays enough for me. But the Chiefs, Mahomes didn't play well for like 3 quarters. And you could look at that as a positive because they still ended up winning the game. Defensively, they looked like poop without Chris Jones and L'Jarius Sneed. They were getting passed on, ran on, whatever it felt. And yeah, I came away reading headlines about the Chiefs are the best team in the AFC, the Chiefs are the best team in the NFL, all this stuff, and I'm like, did we watch the same game? Like, I just watched the Chargers control a majority of the game and kind of F it up. And then everyone after the game is talking about how phenomenal Mahomes is and how phenomenal the Chiefs looked. And I'm like, I don't think we watched the same game, bro. Like, honestly, credit the Chiefs for the win and credit them to be able to come back in certain spots and be able to fight on the road and win. And against a divisional foe, that's nice. But, the 2 teams that I watched on Thursday, the Chargers were the better team for most of the game. And that's what frustrated me about post-game. Just like it frustrated me about the Colts and the Patriots game. All right, so those are my thoughts on Thursday Night Football. Next up, I got to talk about our boy Ryan Tannehill. Okay? This guy Ryan Tannehill right here. Take a look at those stats. The Pittsburgh Steelers beat the Tennessee Titans. Another team went on to expose the Tennessee Titans and Ryan Tannehill. And I think you look at these numbers. These numbers are specifically from the games where Derrick Henry and A.J. Brown have not played. Since losing Derrick Henry, these are Ryan Tannehill's stats. He has 4 touchdowns and 7 interceptions. He has fumbled 6 times. He has a 66% completion percentage, which is pretty high, but when you look at his yards per attempt, it's 5.87. And his air yards per attempt is 4.64. There have been some absolutely disgusting performances from Ryan Tannehill throughout this stretch. And I think they've exposed Ryan Tannehill. For the past 2 seasons, we've been talking about Tannehill as that fringe top 10 quarterback. And I think no Derrick Henry, no A.J. Brown, no Arthur Smith has exposed Ryan Tannehill to be just another one of those system guys, and I don't like to say system quarterback, but a guy that is more reliant on the supporting cast than is an individual phenom. That truly is the case if we thought that it wasn't before. Now, Tannehill has some positives. He's got a big arm, a good deep ball. He's pretty mobile. He can run. But the Titans' weakness is when you force Ryan Tannehill to beat you, he probably isn't going to be able to do it, especially without his top guns, especially without the threat of Derrick Henry there. And I think this is just another game, the Steelers game, of evidence that the Titans won't truly be able to do it this year. Because I think there's going to be a team that puts Tannehill in a bind and forces him to be the show. And I don't think he's ready to be the show. Just look at these numbers. It's not too complicated. I understand it gets better. I understand with Henry and Brown, he's a better player. But let's not kid ourselves. There's going to be a team in the playoffs that slows down Derrick Henry, that slows down A.J. Brown, and forces Tannehill to find his other options, forces this offense to expand and evolve. And the drop back pass game isn't creative enough. It's not good enough. Tannehill isn't consistent enough. And right now, he's turning the ball over too much. And right now, the Titans' offense is being exposed, and Ryan Tannehill is being exposed. And I think although Henry isn't playing, A.J. Brown isn't playing, it kind of gives you a sense of like, okay, but when they're playing, we know what to take away. We know what to focus on. We know that we need to commit to stopping these guys because we know that Tannehill isn't comfortable beating us left-handed. And you need to be able to beat teams left-handed in the playoffs. Tannehill exposed. Let me know in the comments what you think. Next. Okay, this is another thing. Okay? So, many people are going to be talking about how the Cardinals have fallen off as a contender. And you guys know that I haven't been super high on the Cardinals. If you follow me, if you follow the channel, if you follow my power rankings, you understand that I have never really been a Cardinals guy. I don't think I've ever ranked them first in my power rankings. I don't think I've ever said they were my pick for the Super Bowl. I don't think I've ever said they were my pick for the NFC. And these recent weeks are the reasons why. And I don't want to brag. I don't want to sit on my high horse. I don't want to say I told you so. But these recent games, specifically the Lions game, is an example of why the Cardinals aren't going anywhere this year and are simply not ready to go anywhere in the playoffs. Offensively, breaking it down, there's too much on Kyler Murray. Specifically when DeAndre Hopkins is out, that weapon that is forced you to double him, that is forced to pay attention to him, that is forced to take him away. When there is no D-Hop, it hurts Kyler's productivity. It hurts him in those big spots to throw a ball up to him. But it also hurts the rest of weapons. The way that a weapon chain works is a lot like a cornerback chain. It's a matchup chain, right? The NFL is very much a matchup depth chart. This is why I believe in wide receiver depth and cornerback depth. Because you need to have these positions stocked with talent, because some teams will have a great number one corner. Some teams will have two good corners. Some teams will have three good corners. Some teams will have three good receivers. But you look at it this way. Do you have an advantage with your one versus their one? Your two versus their two? Our two versus our three versus their three? And without D-Hop, okay, it forces A.J. Green to be the one. Forces Christian Kirk to be the two instead of A.J. Green as the two. Instead of Christian Kirk as the three. Instead of Rondale Moore as the four, he's the three. Instead of the run game getting less attention, it's now getting more attention. Instead of Kyler's scrambling ability getting less attention, it's getting more attention. And with the offense, there's too much on Kyler. It's just him, backyard football all the time. Every time they need a big play, it's Kyler. Go out there, make a throw, make a run, make a play. I like Cliff's offense. I think at a base level, it's solid. But far too many times they play a good team. And even in this game versus the Lions, who stink, we saw not enough in the offense. It was figured out. And versus the good teams this year, we've seen the Cardinals struggle offensively for the most part. And we've seen them slowed down. We've seen them shut down. And that's because the offense is easier to figure out than most of the best ones. Now, on the flip side, and I think this is their real issue, no J.J. Watt has since exposed the run defense of the Cardinals. Since the Packers game, I've noticed a trend. The Cardinals can be ran on. And they can be out-physical. They can be bullied. On top of that, they can't really cover you on the perimeter. The Lions push the Cardinals around. And the concerning thing about this Lions game is that the Cardinals didn't lose the way, let's say, New England lost to the Colts, where it was like pump block, field goal offside, two bad interceptions. The Cardinals lost because they lost. And it was to one of the worst teams in the NFL. They got beat off the ball. They got bullied. They got physically manhandled. They got outcoached. All of those things happened in this game versus the Lions. And that is the reason they're going nowhere. You can't lose to the Lions in week 15 and tell me you're going anywhere. So, the Cardinals, they're not a contender. Next. The Packers don't impress me, guys. Like, I understand they're going to be everyone's number one team, and they might even be my number one team. But that might be by default, because there isn't really a number one team in this league. There is a bunch of teams that have a chance, but none of them have stood out amongst the rest. And you watch this Packers game. The Ravens had Tyler Huntley at quarterback, no Lamar Jackson, right? They're without their two starting running backs, offensive linemen. They're without their two best corners, maybe their three best corners. They're without D linemen, linebackers, safety. I mean, the Ravens had their second string, third string team out there. And they're going toe to toe, drive for drives, back and forth with Aaron Rodgers and the Packers. And sure, Aaron Rodgers played a good game, but he was playing Swiss cheese defense all day long. He's playing special teamers at corners. He's playing gunners that are playing perimeter corner here, covering Devontae Adams. Guys I've never heard of. On the other hand, Tyler Huntley's ripping and shredding this Packers vaunted defense. Like, yeah, the Packers won, but they were one play away from losing against the Ravens, who I understand they have the name and they have the record that suggests they're good. But let's be fair. That Ravens team that played on Sunday is not good. So if anything, I came away from that Packers game looking like, bro, they are not good. Like, if anything, they're overrated. They couldn't stop the run. They couldn't stop scrambling quarterback. They couldn't stop some throws from Huntley. They couldn't stop Mark Andrews to save their damn lives. They couldn't stop it. Offensively, they were good. But how much do you have to say is that because they're playing a special team cornerback? I don't know. So, like, the Packers, they add another win. They've got the first round bye right now. They're probably not going to lose it. But do we truly believe in them versus the elite of the elite when they just played the Ravens and looked like garbage? And even though they won, they played a third string team. I can't emphasize that enough. That's a game where you go in there and you dominate. Personally, it's not a divisional foe. This is a team that you never play. You should easily win this game. And the Packers did not. And the Packers defense is kind of becoming a concerning point of their team right now. And like I said last week, are the Packers as good as we all think? Or and this is contrast to the Bills, are the Packers' stats suggesting that they're maybe overrated in our minds? That's something to think about for sure. The next man I want to discuss is a man called Jimmy G. Jimmy Garoppolo is everybody's favorite player right now. He's being praised by the media, by the social media, by the fans. He's being called things like underrated, like forgotten, like underestimated. And People are going on and on and on about Jimmy Garoppolo being this phenomenal quarterback who never gets his due, never gets his respect. And I agree with some of that sentiment. But I gotta be honest, every single time, guys, every single time I see a stat on Twitter from Jimmy Garoppolo, I say to myself, wow, Kyle Shanahan is good. And I know Jimmy Garoppolo. Trust me, I've watched a lot of Jimmy Garoppolo. I saw him coming up in the New England system. I saw him play for the Pats. I saw him play for the Niners. This is a guy that is a solid quarterback. Let's not pretend that the guy is Aaron Rodgers, Tom Brady. He's not in that convo. Does he deserve maybe a tad bit more respect than he gets? Yes, definitely. I think the Niners might have made a mistake drafting Trey Lance. That is a discussion, for sure. But when you see stats like this, where people are like, oh, Jimmy Garoppolo is first or second in EPA, when Jimmy Garoppolo has 8 passer rating games of over 100, he's been amazing. How much of that is the offense? How much of that is guys running wide open across the field? How much of that is these incredible screens? How much of that is the scheme? Because I feel like if you put Derek Carr on the 49ers, what would their record be? And I asked Lenny B this. He's a Niners fan and a Raiders fan. He said the Niners would be 12-2 with Derek Carr. And I think Derek Carr is a better quarterback than Jimmy Garoppolo. Nobody's talking about Derek Carr the way they're talking about Jimmy Garoppolo. What would the Niners record be if Kirk Cousins was their quarterback? What would the record be if Tannehill was the quarterback? Like, are these guys better than Jimmy? Are they worse than Jimmy? Like, Jimmy's solid, don't get me wrong, but everyone kind of looks at him as like this guy that's a winner, this guy that's underrated. And I don't know if that narrative's necessarily true. I think he's just found himself in a really good situation. Is he a solid, serviceable guy? Yes. I'm not saying he's not. And he makes this Niners team a dark horse. With him in the lineup, they're a good team. But this is the thing. Everyone's going to say, oh, look at Kyle's record without Jimmy and all this stuff. Yeah, look at the quarterbacks who had, we saw one this weekend, Nick Mullins, okay? Like Nick Mullins, CJ Beathard. Yeah, these guys are third-string quarterbacks. Some of them are out of the NFL for a reason. Jimmy Garoppolo's a starting quarterback. He's a top 20 quarterback without a doubt. He might be top 16, right? But like all these stats, everybody praising Jimmy G all the time. It's like, bro, he's not underrated just because his record is what it is because he's got a great offensive mind. He's got Debo, Ayuk, Kittle, a good offensive line, a good running game, which mostly carries the offense, and a good defense. He's in a great situation. Is he a solid quarterback? Yes. Again, yes. But how many games can you really point to and say Jimmy won that game for the 49ers? Maybe 1 or 2 in his career. Even in the playoff run, he was a backseat driver. So, Jimmy Garoppolo, I love the guy. I think if he was my quarterback, I'd be fine with it. But that's exactly why the 49ers drafted Trey Lance, because they're fine with it. They're not excited about it. They're not ecstatic about it because they know what he is. He's solid. He'll execute the offense very, very well. Right? And it's not to the level of like Matt Ryan with Kyle Shanahan where like Matt Ryan is like, when he's in that system, he's like Hall of Fame level quarterback, right? Without the system, he's a very good quarterback. But in that system, he's MVP. Right? And that's my point. A lot of quarterbacks would have that stat with Kyle Shanahan. So, I like Jimmy. But that had to be said. Next. Let me know about Jimmy in the comments. Oh, boy. Oh, boy. Pats equal the underdog. I regret doing that take. I regret doing that take. But hey, I will say this about this. Remember this take from last week? The Patriots are better off as an underdog. So their loss this past week might actually help them. Listen to me. It might actually help them because now people are going to underestimate them. Now people are going to discount them. Now people are going to say they're not a threat. Now people are going to say the Colts are the threat and not the Pats. That's exactly where they want to be. Just going to say that much. Next. Oh boy. Tom Brady is 0-4 versus the Saints with the Bucs in the regular season and has been outscored by 64 points in those matchups. What happened in that Sunday night football game? We all expected, okay, maybe the Saints would play them close because they always do, but the Bucs were going to come out winners. Well, that's not what happened. The Bucs got shut out 9-0, and it was close, but 9-0 is embarrassing in some way, shape, or form. Now, there was a lot that happened in the game. Fournette got hurt, Evans got hurt, Godwin got hurt, all within the first half, and the Bucs had to adjust and never really truly could. But this is another bad loss by the Bucs over these last 2 years, and I was extremely frustrated watching this game. I was extremely frustrated about this game, even now, but especially after the game. And I'm going to be honest with you, there are moments as a fan where, of course, I'm a Pats fan. I'm also a Bucs fan, of course, being a Brady fan. And there are days where I typically, on a good week, my team wins. At least one of them win, right? And I'll listen to my podcasts. This was one of those losses where I couldn't even listen to a single critique of the Bucs. You know those days where you just don't want to hear anything. You just don't want to you don't want to have the podcast on. You don't want to turn on Mitch because you know he's going to rag on you. You don't want to be anywhere near a TV. You don't want to be anywhere near it. Right? You don't listen to your normal shows because you can't hear it. You can't hear the criticism. You can't hear the belittling. And that was me after this game. This one hit me. I'm going to admit it. It hit me. As a guy that likes Brady, as a guy that loves the Bucs, and enjoyed them winning the Super Bowl last year, this one hit me hard. And it particularly was because it was the Saints, and I think this was a really good point about Tom Brady, and he said this on his podcast, and I thought this was really fascinating. So he said this during this season. So he said that, and this is specifically the case for Brady, and I specifically feel this way about the Bucs. To a lesser degree about the Patriots, it still kind of lingers with New England a little bit, but more so with Tom Brady in particular, more so than any other athlete I see in today's age. Especially because it's the NFL and there's only one game a week. Wins have become relief for Tom Brady and his fans, and that's how I feel about it. When Tom Brady and the Bucs win, it's a relief. I don't got to deal with the haters. When the Bucs lose, it's like the world. It's like Chicken Little. You know what I mean? It's like the world is shattered. The other teams won the Super Bowl. It's all this madness. And everyone gets on you if you're a fan of them. And that's what sucks. That's what sucked about being a Patriots fan. That was the biggest, worst part about being a Patriots fan. Is every loss from the dynasty is just the sky is falling. The era is over. It's over. It's done. And this is the same thing that we see with the Bucs and Brady, and it puts me through a loop every single week. It's why I've enjoyed this Patriots team, because there isn't really that stress of losing as much, but the win is so much more exciting because it's not as easy. It doesn't come as easy. And this is a long way of saying that I was extremely disappointed in the Bucs' effort versus the Saints. And I'm extremely down on the Bucs at this moment in this moment in time. And I've got to think to myself, I can't get too caught up in this because we've seen Tampa Bay struggle against the Saints unlike any other team. And this is where my frustrations have lied for the last 2 years. Bruce Arians, this coaching staff, every time they play, they suit up to play the Saints, they get out-coached, and every time the Bucs come in, I say this almost every time they play, it's like the Saints have a new wrinkle or two to play the Bucs, and the Bucs got nothing. They're playing the same game plan. They get rolled every time. Every time. And Bruce Arians and his staff have yet to learn from it. I watched this game. I was doing the stream. I couldn't believe how many players were covered in this game. If you watch the tape for this game and blame this game on Brady, you have no idea what you're talking about. There is nobody open in this game. It looked like 2019 Patriots. That's what it looked like. And I'm down on the Bucs because they lost Chris Godwin. I love Chris Godwin. I love that guy. And I don't know what the answer is without him. I need to see this team overcome this loss. So for now, this is the 1 week in the past whole season that I actually doubt that the Bucs might not win the Super Bowl. Because they lost Chris Godwin. They are hurt with Evans. They're hurt with Fournette. They're having to sign Le'Veon freaking Bell. Which, believe me, I love the Killer Bees being back together. But he's Le'Veon Bell at this point, running for 2 yards a carry. Now, I actually thought that was a smart signing because he can catch the ball, run routes, and pass block. But it's Le'Veon Bell, let's be honest. So, I'm just very conflicted about this game. I need this game to get behind me. I need to move on from this game. I need the Bucs to come out versus the Panthers and demolish the Panthers, bro. I really do. I just do. I need AB to be back making plays. Because I'm discouraged about this team that I lay my reputation on the line with these Buccaneers. And the players, I love the players. The coaches consistently let me down in these spots. And I'm at the point where, like, I understand they beat them in the playoffs last year. The Bucs would be better off not getting the 2 seed. Because if they got to play the Saints and they're the 7 seed, I'm not sure who I'm picking. I think I'm done with picking the freaking Bucs over the Saints at this point. It is that bad. Despite the talent advantage that they have, despite the quarterback edge they have, it is that bad at this point. I can't see it. I can't believe it. And now you look at other matchups that I think favored them in the playoffs. Bro, they don't want to play the Saints. I guarantee you that. This team looks shaken. They look shaken up when playing the Saints. They look like a different team. And I said this to everybody in the Discord. I'm like, this Saints team is like the old school Jason Taylor, Zach Thomas Dolphins with the Pats and Brady. That's the last team that shut out Brady. And this is the most recent team that shut out Brady. And that was the time in between, 2006 and 2021. Now, I've got to answer, like, what's going to happen without Chris Godwin? What's going to happen without Fournette and Evans at this moment? I think, I'm not going to say this is a blessing in disguise because obviously having no Chris Godwin is terrible. But I do think keeping Fournette, Evans, and whoever else out until the playoffs is a blessing in disguise because you understand that Godwin will be out. Getting AB in the rhythm in this offense, back and healthy in this offense, is going to be big in the playoffs. AB, at the beginning of this year, I know that you might hate him. Best receiver on the team at the beginning of the year. And there's no way around it. He was phenomenal. Okay? Secondly, this team, I understand that everyone hyped up their depth at wide receiver and playmaker before the year. That hasn't been the case. You watch that Saints game, Jalen Darden struggles, Scotty Miller struggles, Keyshawn Vaughn stinks. Cam Braid has been underwhelming. OJ Howard has been underwhelming. At this point, they're kind of just names. Even Tyler Johnson has been disappointing. This team needs to find reliable third, fourth, fifth options. And I think through these next 3 games, they'll be able to find that. And that might be the blessing in disguise of not having Mike Evans to rely upon, not having Leonard Fournette to rely upon, because now Brady, a guy that needs trust and rapport to build with these receivers, he's going to be able to do that before the playoffs. So that's what I'm looking to see from the Bucs in these next 3 games. If they blow the teams out, that's a plus. Obviously, you want to win the games. At this point, it doesn't even really matter if you drop a game because third seed, second seed, what does it really matter? I mean, what does it really matter? You lost the bye, what does it really matter? So, Tampa Bay, if they're going to still win the Super Bowl, which I believe they've got a shot to do, does no Chris Godwin hurt their odds? Hell yes, it does. He's a great player. He's a very good person, and it sucked to see him get hurt because that's one of the best dudes on the team, and he's in a contract year. I think he's 26. I mean, you want to see that guy get paid. He's a hard worker. He's a good guy. He's a good teammate. He deserves to get paid. He's a great player, and it's going to hurt his odds because of that injury, which sucked. And the hit I hated, by the way. But in the playoffs for the Bucs to go all the way, to win the Super Bowl, their defense, first and foremost, needs to play like the defense in the playoffs, and the only way that's going to happen is through health and through momentum, which they need entering these playoffs. Now, they'll have a chance to get right because I think they play the Panthers twice and the Jets. So those are 3 games you can build defensive momentum from. On top of that, their run game needs to become more of a critical element. Something that's been confusing about the Bucs playing the Saints is their lack or their reluctance to run the ball. The only game that the Bucs have beat the Saints the last 2 years is a game where they almost ran the ball more than they passed the ball. The only game where they came close to that 50-50 balance was the divisional round. And yes, they didn't go for those explosive plays like they typically do, but that's the way to beat the Saints. I know that their run defense is good, but you've got to maintain that threat and open up the play action. Because without it, the Saints pass rush clearly has some sort of edge on your offensive line, and their cover guys are covering you well. You've got to open that balance up, and they were reluctant to do that. I think they started with 10 straight passes in the game, and they got a bit too cocky and confident in that regard, and they didn't commit to balance. And typically, I'm a guy that loves pass-heavy script, but that's a matchup where it indicates you got to run a little bit. So, 3 things. Secondary playmakers need to step to the table. 1 or 2 guys, Scotty Miller, Jalen Darden, Cam Brate, OJ Howard, somebody, Rojo, they need to step up. They need to play big in these next 3 games. The defense needs to find top 10 form. And they need to be healthy for the playoffs. If they can achieve those things, they're still my pick to go to the Super Bowl in the NFC. But, and I'm not counting them out. They've got Tom Brady. They've got a great roster. And it's funny that they actually made the Super Bowl without AB last year because he didn't really play for them other than the Washington game until the Super Bowl, right? He missed the NFC divisional game. He got hurt in like the first play. And then the NFC championship, he missed that game. So now it's the reverse. AB is going to have to step up in place of Chris Godwin, which is interesting. And I actually think for you Bucs fans, one solid note is that I think Tyler Johnson is probably a better player in the slot and in the Chris Godwin role than he is in that AB role, if that makes sense. So those are my thoughts on the Bucs. Am I worried? Are they in trouble? Not necessarily. I think they're fine. And the biggest reason I say that is because they struggle versus the Saints. That's a matchup that you don't want to see again. That's a team that has your number. But they're still in the mix. And does their odds get hit? Yes. Maybe they're not the clear favorite anymore. But they're still one of the favorites. And there's no doubt about that. And lastly, on top of that conversation, talking about favorites, contenders, all this jazz, I do want to discuss ranking the NFC and AFC contenders. Okay? So, there are a lot of people that seem to believe it's a foregone conclusion of a Packers-Chiefs Super Bowl. Okay? For whatever reason, a lot of people are like, it's Packers-Chiefs, it's Packers-Chiefs, it's clearly Packers-Chiefs. Oh, in the AFC, it's Chiefs. And I think maybe too many people are listening to Nick Wright or something, or I don't know. But it's not clearly Packers-Chiefs. Now, in the AFC and NFC, Would I rank the odds of both teams as likely to have the number 1 seeds? Although I will say if the Chiefs drop it to the Steelers without Tyreek Hill and Travis Kelce, the Patriots are back probably as the number 1 seed if they beat the Bills. But if those two teams get the number 1 seed, they are the favorites to get there. Would I pick them to get there? I almost guarantee you I won't pick this to be the Super Bowl when I give you my playoff predictions. So that's maybe a little bit of a spoiler, but that's just the way I see it. Neither team is dominant. Neither team is above the rest. And this season, upsets are bound to happen. And an upset team is bound to get to the Super Bowl. It's just going to happen, okay? And I personally believe that the 1 seed in the AFC matters more in the NFC. And the reason I say that, even though the Packers and Lambeau is a thing, I think it matters more for the AFC because you need that slight edge in the AFC. Because I feel like all of the teams in the AFC are so close. On top of the fact that I believe that the 1 seed and the 2 seed, although the 1 seed, you get the bye, I feel like if you get the 2 in the NFC, right? You're playing a team as the 7 seed who doesn't really even deserve to be in the playoffs. They might not even be an above 500 team. So you're more than likely to be double-digit favorites in that game or a heavy favorite in that game to move to the next round. So does it really matter at the end of the day, the 1 and the 2 seed? If anything, there's maybe, there could be, for certain matchups and certain teams, a bigger edge to being the 2 and the 3 seed in the NFC. Now, in the AFC, you look at the 7 seed, that it could be the Bills. It could be the Chargers. It could be the Colts. Like, that's a team you don't really want to play. You'd rather just have the bye. And some of these teams in the AFC, the Titans, the Patriots, the Colts, they're feisty, physical teams. And having a week off could be very beneficial. Right? So, the way I rank it in the AFC is I'll put the Chiefs first. You got to give them respect, and currently is the number 1 seed. At number 2, it's still the Pats for me. It's still the Pats for me, no doubt about it. Especially if they get the 1st seed, watch out. Number 3, I've got the Colts right now. I've got the Colts. And I didn't mention this in my Colts-Patriots review, but I regret not saying it. I could see the Colts and Patriots in the AFC Championship. If things work out that way, I could see that happening. At number 4, I would put the Titans. I would. Now, the Titans beat the Bills and the Chiefs with their full healthy lineup. And I'm not a huge Titans guy, right? But I do believe that they have that physical mentality. They can play at home or on the road. And with a healthy lineup, I think they can fight with anybody and be in the game versus anybody, right? Number 5, I would put the Bills. And number 6, I would put the Chargers. Number 7, I have no idea. Okay? Maybe the Bengals, Ravens, Steelers, Browns. I have no idea. The NFC, I got the Packers first, okay, with the Chris Godwin injury. It does have an impact for me. I need to see it before I believe it with the Bucs now without Chris Godwin, but I do think AB is going to mask a lot of that because we haven't seen AB on this team for quite some time. Number 3, I would put the Rams. I like them. I think their defense is starting to get it going, which I like. They're going to need that in the playoffs because they're not just going to shoot out versus everybody. But they do have a capacity to score. At number 4, the 49ers. What scares me about the 49ers is quarterback and secondary. Everything else I love. At number 5, the Cowboys. Dynamic offensively, but they haven't quite been playing that way. I think they need to win the Super Bowl or get to the Super Bowl. Defensively, they're good. They take the ball away. But I need to see them perform versus the top teams. And number 6, the Cardinals. I don't think they got much of a chance. I think it's mostly the top 5. But if you were to give me a number 6, it's clearly the Cardinals because they're better than the number 7. So those are your AFC, NFC rankings in terms of how I think likeliness to get to the Super Bowl / win the Super Bowl at this moment in time, factoring in a few new things and pieces of information. Let me know in the comments what you think, and let me know your contender list in the comments below. There you have it, guys. That is my Week 15 non-live, but recorded version of the NFL Review Show. Let me know in the comments what you thought and any of the topics that you want to discuss. And also, don't forget, if you are a Spider-Man fan or want to see other content from me, head over to my Mitch Milani channel. And if it becomes successful and you guys support me on it, I would love to open myself up to new avenues of content, because there's more to me than just the NFL. So if you want to support me to that next level, go check out that channel and just give me a subscription, or check out that review, and I'll let you know certainly when it is up. Thanks for watching. It's Mitch. Peace.